Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming to this talk jointly hosted by the Center for Interdisciplinary Legal Studies here in the Faculty of Law, and also the CAMO, the Center for AI Management Organizations in our business school. So my name is Sida Liu. I'm the kind of moderator for this talk. I'm also a faculty member here in the law faculty. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Professor Daniel Muzio from the University of New York, probably one of the world-leading scholars in the studies of professional service firms worldwide. And Professor Muzio has published extensively on topics related to professional service firms and the theories of professions, and also many other topics related to professional organizations. And today, of course, his talk is on a very interesting topic, which is, does hiring star lawyers work? And of course, this is the topic of his actual paper, which is a lot more technical. But the talk is actually, I think, has a lot of implications for the legal profession. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Professor Muzio. Thank you.
Thank you, Sida. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invite. I'm very, very happy to be here. Very, very, very happy to be presenting this work here at HKU. This is a very much a congenial place for this presentation. A lot of work on stars and mobility. We frame it as stars. Other concepts would apply: elites, talent management, high caliber workers. Same phenomenon. We chose the word stars because there's a conversation around that. A lot of this work has been based in Hong Kong or drawn on Hong Kong data. Betancourt and Basel in our science 2016 uses data on Hong Kong lawyers, and we engage with those. And of course, your own Sida's work on lawyer mobility. So this is really a place where a lot is ground zero for this type of research, probably to do with the quality of the data available. That's always an issue. So this is joint work. Myself, Claudia Gabinetta at York. She's very happy, smiling for those of you in the business school. She just got an acceptance in ASQ, so that's why she's smiling after 7 years of work on it. Next to her, our econometrician, John Maudsley, HSC Paris. I need to make a big caveat. I am a qualitative, conceptual-driven scholar. Until a few years ago, I would have known, until we started on this paper, I wouldn't have known what a regression looks like. So I will present the findings, but I am not able to have a discussion in detail on the actual methods. For those of you who have a keen quantitative eye, I can share the paper where the full methodology is. Over and beyond that, we need to bring John in. So if there's something wrong with the quants, it's not my fault, it's John's fault. So I said that in advance. So why this paper? This paper was born from a sense of dissatisfaction that we had on the general consensus on the literature on star, high quality mobility. Because the general, and I'll say more about this, the general balance of opinion recently has been moving towards the fact that this is a bad idea, that hiring high quality employees damages, undermines all sorts of organizational outcomes, i.e. organizations become worse following the hire of a star employee. We don't doubt that that is the case. There are lots of examples and lots of reasons why that may be. But we did not accept that that could be the full story. Because the question is, if this is so, and if 20 years of research show this, why do some of the most resourceful, smart, sophisticated organizations in the world, such as elite law firms, investment banks that Boris Groysberg talks about, and science department in leading universities, continue in this practice? And not only that, they do it more and more. So there must be something else. It may be that there are some situations, at least, and there may be other reasons, but it may be that there are some situations, at least, where hiring a star is not such a bad thing, or where it's more likely to work. And that's what we wanted to find. We wanted to interrogate that deeply and find out whether there are some situations where this may actually work. And we do find two moderators, a group pre-hire human capital base, relative standing of the group in the organization, that positively affect this relationship and potentially turn it into positive. So if anything happens to me in the next few minutes, this is a nutshell of the talk. So I usually spend a lot of time on this, but I think we're in a law school largely, so I think this is kind of familiar with people. But law firms engage increasingly in this practice known as lateral hiring. they poach each other's partners. You got evidence from the legal press, all the big names are doing this. So Clifford Chance, Linklaters, blah, 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 blah. In the American data is even stronger. This finishes 2018 because that's when our data finishes. AmLaw shows that there are 2,750 lateral hires of partners in the top 200 firms alone. And actually, if you look at the distribution, hardly any firms do not engage in this at least once a year. The average is between 6 and 11. So a wide-ranging practice. This is surprising because 20 years ago, this was not the case. There was a labor mobility for associates. You failed up or out, you failed tenure from, I don't know, Watchell, and maybe you went down to KL Legal or somewhere else. But once you made partner, that's why you stayed. Now, you can accuse me of being a romantic, but the model of partnership is marriage. It's a bond based on emotion, based on a professional bond. So the idea that you'd be moving around was an anomaly. Of course it happened, but it was the exception, not the rule. Last 20 years, this has changed, as you can see from the data. Now, it's a big event.
We post yeah, I know you can't resist that.
Yeah,
yeah, but we have different norms.
I've been in the presentations in business school where I've not finished talk. Yeah, and I don't mind either way, but we'll stick to one model. It's a big thing. It's a big thing because it's disruptive. You are taking in a big person with a big personality, but also in law, it's a big thing because these are not employees. These are owners. You know, you're letting them in, sharing the profits of the firm and the governance of the firm. So it's a big thing for many, many reasons. It's certainly an expensive thing. Average cost 2.3 million 2018. If you take 1 year of guaranteed salary, the standard is 2 years of guaranteed salary for most of these deals, and that takes up the cost to $4.2 million 2018. More now. So this is a very big consequential decision for everybody involved. So why do firms do it? So obviously there's a plethora of different reasons. These are not mutually exclusive, but in a quarter of cases, one of the reasons is to improve, and this is where our paper is located, improve the quality of the services that the firm offers, to become better, for a group to become better in delivering legal advice. And there are, of course, other reasons as well. This leads to a question: does it work? Can you buy quality? In other words, another way, and perhaps we will have this in the title. Our title now is a little bit of a mouthful, but perhaps the real question is: can you buy quality by hiring stars? Now, the consensus, as anticipated in the practitioner literature, but also in the academic literature, note bottom left. That's our Harvard Business Review based on this paper. The consensus is that it at least is tricky. And if anything, the general opinion is trending that you're unlikely to, and if anything, you're more likely to make things worse. So hiring a star deteriorates the quality of the services that the firm provides. So the literature is kind of divided, and there are good arguments for and against. So kind of quickly. So the argument for, the case for, stars have higher levels of skills and competencies. Stars are individuals which have a disproportionately high level of performance and visibility. That's why the stars shine. So stars have higher levels of skills and competencies than normal employees. So if you bring them in, they make a positive contribution to your knowledge stock. And these are knowledge-intensive firms. So this matters. So they make an addition, an additive kind of an argument. Stars may have better routines. They are stars because they found out a better way of working, and therefore if you bring them in, others can learn from them and can also raise the game and improve the ways in which they act. There's a social capital arguments. They have better connections to powerful stakeholders, judges, competitors in other firms, peers in other firms, clients. So they open up new opportunities to existing staff, leading to more innovation, productivity, and all the rest. Stars have higher visibility, so it's not so much of what they do personally, but it's a signaling argument. So if Sida moves to York, let's say, I wish, people start thinking, oh, Sida knows something about the University of York that we didn't know, and that brings up an upward valuation, and therefore other stars or aspiring stars follow. Yeah, so kind of a signaling kind of argument. And various papers in various disciplines, take on all of these different arguments. The case against. So why may star hiring not work? Obvious one, Ockman and Pisano. The success of stars is not entirely based on individual skills. It depends on collective organizational criteria. So in particular, on the support of others. Somebody is a star in a specific context because they have the right colleagues, because they have the right routines and systems, the right secretarial support, the right culture for them in that particular organization. These things are not portable. So when you move the star, you do not bring the entire social system that has made them into a star, and therefore they're unlikely to reproduce performance. So a portability argument. Second argument is Prato and Ferrero in Science. That's our model paper. Stars are disruptive. They are prima donnas. They are less willing to adjust. I'm the star. Why should I change? You've recruited me because I'm a star. Clearly, you wanted me for what I am. So why should I modify what I do to fit in this organization? So they believe that they don't have to change, and that actually the star status protects them from changing. So kind of an adaptability argument. Again, Prato and Ferrero, this is probably the main argument, is that they crowd out others. So they deprive other people in the organization from the levels of attention, resources, which inhibits others from shining. So they steal the shine from your other potential employees, so making their performance worse. And other quite important argument for our paper is that they cause anxiety and resistance. So existing staff resent the fact that the organization is spending millions, $4.5 million on new individual. What does it mean for us? Does it mean that the organization does not believe in us? Does it mean that if I'm an associate, I've lost, internal labor markets? I'm an associate, have I lost my possibility of being promoted? So there are anxieties, status anxiety. Laura Empson, my friend in the UK, talks of lawyers as insecure narcissists. So you can imagine how this plays out, these lawyers in top firms. And this leads to non-collaborative behaviors. So rather than collaborating and helping the organization capture the value of the new hire, they'll stand back and they'll think, well, since you are the big shot, you do it. Let's see where you go. I'm putting this in kind of plain language, but you can imagine all the kind of mechanisms. So you don't have collaboration, you have the opposite. You have uncollaborative, uncooperative types of behavior out of defensiveness. So literature is divided. If anything, the majority of papers are trending towards the negative these days. As I said to you right at the beginning, we don't buy that this can be the whole story. We don't buy that these sophisticated organizations are dupes and that they engage in an expensive and disruptive practice just out of, I guess, institutional inertia or whatever it is, out of an isomorphic bandwagon, if there are any institutionalists in this room. So rather than presuming that star hiring is negative or positive, we take an agnostic position and we want to examine the conditions under which it is more likely to add value or not. So that's all basis of the paper and what we are trying to do. Very simple theoretical argument. All hiring events of stars have negative and positive. The negative is disruption. There's always disruption when you hire a star for some of the reasons that we discussed. But there's also positive, the synergy. There's all of the things that we discussed in the literature, both are present each time. Stars are difficult to adjust, others might resist, but there is also new human capital, there is also new social capital. But of course, the balance between these two will vary across circumstances. And whether synergies dominate or whether disruption dominates, we have a successful move or a non-successful move. Okay? And the paper shows that there are two moderators in particular which will lead the positive side, the synergy, to dominate over the negative side, which is the disruption. So it will tilt the balance, two moderators tilt the balance from negative, from disruption to synergy. And these are our hypotheses. The first one is the positive association between star hiring and subsequent group quality compared to non-hiring groups. I will say more about this in a second. Will be stronger when the group incumbent human capital base is stronger. So, a couple of things. I explained why we're using star. We are talking to that literature. We could have been talking to another one, but there's a nice conversation there. it's a relative design. We are comparing towards similar groups who have not hired a star. We also have infirm effects. Our data also shows that there's a negative effect on the firm, within the firm itself. Our story is cleaner across all models if we take a relative design, a comparative design. And also, a lot of this has a comparative dimension. The war of talent is not just I become stronger by taking somebody new in this firm. I'm also making you weaker by taking one of your stars, one of your talents. So it is a kind of a comparative story in many ways. It's ecological. The star moves are always ecological, aren't they, in many ways? Maybe we'd like to do some more with that at some point. And our variable is incumbent human capital based. This is the quality level of the existing lawyers in the group that's hiring the star. And in particular, the presence of other stars. Does this group have already other stars? And how good are they? Not all stars are equal. We have a measure of those, which we'll talk about in a second. And why does this hypothesis work? High quality incumbents are often stars themselves. They buy into the idea of a star. They are part of that milieu. They share the same ideas, aspirations, patterns, social identity, and they believe that being a star is probably dependent on internal attributions. So they've deserved it. You earn being a star rather than being dependent on chance, favoritism, politics, nepotism, and all of these other kind of things. So they share the idea of a star, at least in principle, rather than being objected to it. High quality incumbents are less threatened and crowded out because the status and prior performance allows them to buffer themselves from the new hire. So although the new hire sucks attention and resources, they can hold their own. They can hold adequate levels of attention and support because they are star ready and they have a track record of performance. For these reasons and other reasons, they are also more likely to be receptive to the newcomer and to engage in collaborative. They do not feel threatened because they are secure in their own position, because they are also stars, and therefore they open out to collaborative types of behavior, which help to capture the value of the new synergies. The second kind of argument, really the second kind of main argument, is that groups where power, attention, and expertise are distributed amongst several key employees, several stars, are support more successful collaboration patterns. This is based on a recent paper in management science by Mindruta, who studies different collaboration patterns within groups. And there are 2 points here. First of all, if you have many stars joining a group, if you're adding a star to existing stars, the stock of rare forms of human and social capital is higher because the new star possesses rare, valuable skills in their own right, and existing stars also possess rare, inimitable skills in their own right, and that offers the possibility of synergies. The stock of knowledge is simply, and skills is simply higher in those contexts. But also collaborations are balanced and more equal between the various stars. Conversely, if you have a situation where you add a star to a group of non-stars, the star dominates that collaboration as the non-stars gravitate around the new star. And the contrary, if you have a group of stars already and you bring in a non-star, that non-star, the impact of that non-star is lost within the team of stars. But if you have a team of multiple stars, you can presuppose, and we don't have the data to observe this, quantitative data of official data does not allow us to look at these mechanisms in depth. You would need an experiment, I would imagine. We presume, following Mindruta, that the collaboration is more collaborative, leading to the ability to capture synergies and to leverage synergies and to capture the value of the move. Now, these are not in the paper, but we do have some interviews. I'm conscious a little bit about time, but they show these are senior partners, managing partners in firms, people right at the top, and they talk very much this language. They're less insecure. They are confident. They do not feel threat. They do not have the unconscious insecurities and anxieties. They are more disposed towards collaborating. So they're very much equal the arguments from the literature that we put in forward. H2, a positive association between hiring a star and subsequent group quality compared to non-hiring groups will be stronger when the group has a higher relative standing in the firm. Is a hiring group one of the best groups in the organization, just an average group like everyone else, or is it one of the weakest ones? This really matters. And in particular, the stronger the group, the relative standing of the group that's hiring, the more likely the move is, the more likely to be successful the move is. Here we have a different variable. Our variable here measures group level qualities. This is an assessment of the group, not of the sum of individuals, although there's an issue of endogeneity, of course. The group quality, the group score will inevitably include an element of the quality of the ingredients of a group, i.e. the stars. But it also assesses group qualities like, I don't know, routines, culture, and so on. The argument is, first of all, obviously that these groups, stronger groups, satisfy the conditions of H1. So H1 is also more likely to be satisfied here. That has a positive effect. But as I said before, it's not just a question of individuals. These are stronger groups. They have stronger group level qualities, such as routines, systems, and procedures, which allow them to better integrate new stars, but also to absorb any disruption. They're stronger groups and they're less likely to be disrupted following the arrival of a star. Moreover, they are central to the organization's success, and therefore they have stable resource flows, which shelter them from the opposition of other groups. You can imagine politics in an organization where other groups say, wait, where is our star? Well, these groups enjoy buffering within the organization because they are so central to the organizational sustained success. Moreover, this is on the disruption side. They're also more likely to capture the value added of the new hire by leveraging and exploiting the synergies with the move. This is quite essential to the argument. Other groups know that the focal group, the hiring group, is a strong group and they can handle disruption. So they do not expect it to suffer negative effects from hiring a star. So other groups trust the focal group to do a good job in assimilating the star and not suffering a negative performance. And therefore they continue to collaborate with a group. They share clients because they know they're not going to lose face by referring clients to a group that is unstable, at least for the time being. So they continue to collaborate, while in a weaker group, they expect deterioration, disruption, conflict, and they may hold off passing clients, sharing work, and so on. Other groups also recognize the centrality of the hiring group to collective performance, and therefore they do not engage in political resistance. So if you're Herbert Smith or if you're Alan Overy, and it's obviously the banking and finance is a core practice area. So if you're hiring a banking and finance a lawyer, or Herbert Smith, a litigation lawyer, the rest of the firm accepts that because it recognizes that that's the core strategic asset of the firm, and that they would benefit from that core group becoming stronger. So all of these things mean that other groups collaborate with the focal group and exploit synergies at the intergroup level. So before we were working in the intergroup, now we're working at a different level, it's intergroup. Sorry, inter. Before it was intra, now it's inter. So other groups work to exploit the new synergies with the focal group. Evidence from the interviews, the first one, yes, it's much easier to add to a strong group already. The second one is the one that's very interesting. It's this argument that other groups know that the focal group can handle the hire. It will not be disrupted. They can continue to work with it, pass clients on without losing face. And this is from a senior partner. These are not in the paper, but they're here. So we can hear the real voice of lawyers. And actually, it's the quantitative person, it's John, that wants to put the quotes in the paper. It's the qualitative people who are resisting, which is quite interesting. There's a little mistake. It's H1 and H2, not H2 and H3. Very simple. I won't say anything really about it. The design is, it's not a complex design. I'll probably go over this quite quickly because I think the audience will probably understand this. Obviously law schools know about professionalism, but this is we look at the law, we look at elite law firms. It's the right setting for this. They are knowledge-based organizations. Knowledge is the main source of it's the main competitive resource. Therefore, firms are under pressure to hire the best and the brightest, i.e. stars. Individuals have high levels of autonomy and discretion. They are professionals, but they also have to collaborate. So they have a high autonomy, therefore they can resist. They can be difficult. They don't have to do what the organization tells them to. So there's a scope for resistance, but they also have to collaborate. Collaboration is essential. No complex client these days can be served by a single lawyer. Collaboration across lawyers in a group, collaboration across groups, sometimes a collaboration across firms. So collaboration is essential as well as individual autonomy. There are strong professional norms on views on how to be a lawyer. be a professional, service a client, but they're also segmented. We know this from Busher and Strauss and from the 1960s and onwards. You know, professions are coalitions, different tribes. There are differences between professions, difference within professions, between groups, difference between lawyers. Egalitarian collegial values, power is distributed, all partners are equal in theory. It's a strong egalitarian culture that should make us suspicious of stars, because in theory all partners are equal. But also influence and control is distributed. Some partners are special. Orwell, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And the more equal here are the ones in official positions, senior partners, managing partners, but above all, the rainmakers, the stars, you know, the ones that control the reputational flows and the capital flows from clients. So this triggers politics, insecurity, defensiveness, and overall, it's a context where quality, reputation, status, and all of this is critical. So this is just, I won't say much more. In a business school, I would have said more, but I guess most people understand what a professional context is and why this would be appropriate for this. Example, longitudinal data set, UK corporate law firms from the UK top 100 from the lawyer, 2000-2017. Data is organized at the firm practice level. Firms have multiple practice groups. Those are our groups. So you got your banking and finance group, capital markets, litigation, arbitration, employment law. We don't look at all the groups. We look at 10. These 10 usually amount to 75%, 80% of a firm's revenues. So we looked at the big ones, you know, capital markets, banks, banking, employment, M&A. 104 firms, 429 practice areas at the firm level. So on average, each firm has 4 ranked practice areas, of course, a standard deviation. 2,727 lawyers who are ranked as stars. 2018, legal profession in England and Wales was 170,000 lawyers. So that gives you a sense of how rare stars are, and nearly 5,000 observations. Sources, the lawyer for the firm level data. Our key variables, legal practice and lawyer ranking data. So the individual and the firm come from Chambers. I collected loads of individual data on lawyers by trailing through the LinkedIn profiles of these 3,000 lawyers, spent such an inordinate amount of time without an array, probably a year of my time on it, to arrive to the point that most of the data was not really usable because it was incomplete. So we have, for some people, we have university degree, the degree classification, whether they got a first or a 2-1, have they done a master's, have they done a PhD, entire career history. And for others, we got very, very little. So for the moment, we've parked this data out, which we have micro data, and maybe we can do something with it in the future. Chambers is being ranked in Chambers is a big deal, is a definite mark of excellence for the industry. Lawyers care about it. They write it on the web pages, on the LinkedIn pages. Firms care about it. They issue press releases when they go. The press reports on it regularly. So it's a big deal. It matters. And so it means that you stand out as being one of the best in the profession. Lawyers are ranked in Chambers from 1 to 6, 1 being the best usually. I say usually because sometimes the scales are different. There's 1 to 4. They vary between practice areas and between years. So we have standardized the scales. John did that. But the scale usually is 1 to 6 in most cases, with 1 at the top. 6 is also very good. Being in there in any form is an achievement. The same applies for the practice groups, which are also ranked 1 to 6 usually. And this data is the result of a rigorous survey. I think law firms provide Chambers with about 30, a long list of about 30 key informants, usually clients, but if you do litigation, it could be judges and so on. And Chambers conducts oral interviews with his clients, and a value is given at the end of this exercise, often considering quantitative data as well. So if you do M&A, total value of the M&A deals that you've been involved, IPOs, total value of the IPOs. If you do litigation, number of times you were in front of the Supreme Court, number of victories in front of the Supreme Court, so on and so forth. So it's a mix of qualitative interview data from the clients and other stakeholders, as well as quantitative information. 2 things here. This is viewed Chambers data supported a whole range of top papers, I'm sure in law, but certainly in management. Paolella and Durant paper on categories and strategies in AMJ based on Chambers data. So there's a long track record of using this data at the highest level in publications. And what does it measure? Those are the criteria that Chambers emphasizes. There's been a bit of a debate between us and others, but what is it? Is it status? Is it reputation? We think it's quality. We will never quell the debate, but people that also argue it's reputation will never be able to unambiguously show that it's reputation. We think it's quality for those reasons, and also for some reasons I will show later on. That's been a bit of a debate between us. What does our DV mention? You can't really see this, but this is what the data looks like. So banking litigations, you have various bands of firms, and you got a kind of assessment. Some of you will be familiar with this kind of assessment at the end. So if you look at strengths, one source says it's a fantastic team doing top quality work. It's quality. Quality comes up, or proxies for quality comes up in many of these kind of descriptors. So to us, it's something to do with the quality of the service rendered. And I think that's more defensible than variables like reputation, status. Same thing with individuals. I'll skip because we need to go. We need to go on. Okay, this is where it starts to become quantitative. I think it's quite simple still. I won't really say much, but the point is that we standardize things to take into consideration variability of scales between years and between firms. Some of our variables are binary, whether the star higher or whether the group is above average or not. Other times we've standardized the kind of Chambers rankings where I've scored. So again, quite simple as far as many quantitative papers go. Now, if I said to you that I knew about these things, I would be lying. Yes. So as I said, if you've got a keen interest, I can share the methodology and the paper. I think Siddharth's got the paper already. It's not been sent. We are collecting the last round of critical friends, and we're going to send it to AMJ, I think. Although it's AMJ or science, we haven't really decided. Many of the papers that we use seem to be in org science, but then again, it's got very strong managerial implications. So that's where we are. Correlations, most of them below 0.5. The ones that are higher, the association between revenues and number of lawyers makes sense. We can explain that, why there's a strong correlation there. Revenues follows numbers of lawyers that you have. The standard number of moves for every year, it's 6%. So there are 6% star hiring events out of every year, annual observations. The average score for the practice from a 0 to 1 scale, it's 0.423. The average score for a lawyer, it's 0.338. On average, practices have nearly 3 stars, quite a few actually. But if you can see, there's a very high standard deviation. The standard deviation score is quite high, so there's great variability. Some groups are monostar or may not even have any stars. Results. Strong, consistent results across all models. I've excluded the kind of control variables to make it fit to a page. There were some of them that would be interesting to a law faculty, actually, and I'll tell you in a minute. As you can see, negative relation of hiring stars across all models as a baseline. It usually does not work. So John quantified that, and it depends on the models, but it can be up to a 10% reduction in your quality, in the group's quality performance compared to groups that did not hire a star. So think about that. You're hiring a star, spending millions, and you got a 10% reduction. Within firm, we looked at within firm is around 5% reduction. I'll talk about the controls on law firms later because I think time is getting on. Although we started probably a few minutes late. But this, the marginal plots, I think this makes it quite nice, quite easy. So you are moving H1. So you're moving from, as you move from low to a high score for the human capital base for your incumbent lawyers, the relationship turns from starkly negative to neutral. So you can see it becomes negligible from a minus 0.038. The H2 is even stronger. The relationship flipped by 164% as the group becomes one of the strongest in the organization. So very clear, very strong results on both. We did a battery of supplementary analysis. So we looked at the variation in, doesn't matter what the score of the firm that the person, of the group that the person is coming from. Does it matter if the group you're hiring is stronger than the group that's hiring or not? And as you can see, it matters. So particularly related to the focal practice ranking. Yes. So if it's lower, we tend to have a positive effect. If the group is stronger, we have a very strong negative effect. So hiring from stronger groups than yourself may be counterintuitive, but I think the literature talks about this. We can go into it later. It's generally a bad idea. And actually, what is interesting here is that our moderators don't really work. Our moderators only work in a condition that you're hiring from a group that is weaker than you. If you're hiring from a stronger group, the moderators do not apply, or if anything, they make things worse. So again, kind of a status kind of argument. You know, you're hiring. We can talk more about the interpretation of this. Bettencourt and Wessel talk about credible and non-credible moves. If people are coming from bigger and better firms, it's probably not a career-driven move. They're either something untoward has happened, either they've been pushed, or either it's the last swan song. People who are retiring for an easier life. It makes sense. They do not observe these things either, but this is what they assume. If you're moving from a lesser to a higher firm, you are stepping up. And therefore, you are keen to assimilate, you're keen to work, you are driven. If you're moving to the top, you're thinking, well, this is a downward, either there's something wrong with you, or this is a downward move, and therefore I'll take it easy before retiring in a few years' time. Obviously, we can show this in a causal sense, but that would be what Bettencourt and Wessel say. Analysis in variation between individual quality and so basically, is there a difference between stars and non-stars? We submitted this paper to SQ and we got rejection after a round of reviews. It's not an SQ paper, by the way. It was the wrong target. But one of the things they asked us, is this the effect of any disruption or are stars different? So we spent a year trawling the legal press, looking for all the moves of non-star lawyers, because star lawyers were chambers, it was easy. Non-star lawyers, we didn't have a record. So we had to go for legal week, spending a whole year with an RA to code this. And it's actually interesting. I'm glad we did it, because if you look about it in general terms, they are generally equal. So they generally have a negative effect. Non-stars is a little bit worse, actually. But if you look at our moderators again largely work for stars and not for non-stars. Yes, they work for non-stars a little bit, but the relationship stays negative. So if you hire a non-star, you've got all of the downside on hiring a star, but not the upside. If you hire a star, there is the upside that if you follow our advice, the relationship can be positive. So this, I'm actually glad that we did this. So it's not the story of because non-stars are a big deal as well. These are partners in top firms. They're not, we're not talking about idiots. So in a way, it's similar, but you got the disruption without having the leverage. So this really, to me, talks to our synergies. Last one, following a decline. Doesn't matter if you're hiring a star following a decline in performance in a group. Majority of firms hire a star when the group's quality is declining because they think this group is struggling. Let's put in a star to remedy the situation. Well, wrong. Don't do it, because you can see the effect here. If you're hiring a star when performance is stable, the effect is almost null. But in situations of declining performance over 2 years, very strong negative relationship. And again, our hypothesis, our moderators only work in a situation in which performance is stable or growing. In declining performance, they do not apply. But the majority of star hiring events happen in the situation of declining performance. So we kind of finished. One of our fears is that we're going to be viewed as a moderator paper, somebody that adds to a couple of variables. But to me, our moderators are so significant that we change the entire, we do identify a path where hiring a star may work. So these are not just tweaking a couple of variables, but our moderators identify an entire different situation when hiring a star may actually deliver against the consensus of the general literature. I was at Sun Yat-sen in China, and I was half joking about this. If we were people in the medical school and we'd found that this antibiotic worked for particular patients and improved the recovery time by N number of days, we'd publish that in, I don't know, Lancet, New England Medical Journal, British Journal of Medicine. Nobody would say it was But how you theoretically change the way that we think about bacteria? Or if you were physicists and we developed, we found out that a particular combine of a particular molecule, particular new material is much more resistant to stress. Nobody then would say, well, but how does it change the way that we think about atoms? And it'd be very worrying if it did. But in management, the general idea is that we need to have a theoretical idea that changes the way in which we think about something. And I was a journal editor of a major journal, GMS, and I'm part of this system. It's a bit of an indictment to our field here. But what we do, I think, when it's big enough, we push towards a relational perspective of stars. It's not about the individual contribution. It's about how the value of the move depends on the relationship between stars and incumbents and between the focal group and other groups in the organization. Also, and we haven't used this in the paper, there's a Matthew effect, sorry. We show that quality is additive, but only at the very highest level. Stars, non-stars don't count, but stars, when you add in them to other stars, in the groups which are the strongest. So there's a Matthew effect, but which only is so quality behaves differently, and it's additive only when it's at the very, 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 very top of the context, not in other situations. For once, I thought in 25 years of career, I have a paper that actually, if I was a practitioner, I would pay to hear the findings. So we have strong managerial implications. Don't hire a star when performance is deteriorating. Hire a star in certain sets. If you lose a star, don't sweat, because your competitor would probably lose from hiring a star. And that's why we developed these in HBR. We have an Harvard Business Review article that we published before the paper was published, because otherwise we would have to wait 5 years. And the findings we thought were quite important, and so on. So anyway, I'll stop here. I'm sure you got questions and comments and disagreements, all the rest.